Alt is a term that refers to a wide variety of movements, styles, genres, and fetishes, all centered around the idea of differentiating yourself from the normies of society, with goths, emos, metalheads, and punks being the most commercialized and recognized by the mainstream. But I would still bet that most people couldn't tell the difference between these groups at a glance, so allow me to dissect and explain the unique traits and mental illnesses of these alt groups. Long ago, the four nations lived in harmony, until one day the Metalheads went mainstream. Your average heavy metal maniac loves to pretend that their favorite genres are unheard of underground fields of bone, despite the fact that metal has been one of the biggest genres of the past few decades, and all their favorite artists are millionaires. Metalheads, much like metal itself, has been around for so long that they've splintered off into a dozen subgenres that later grew in popularity and continued to diverge and spread into even more subcategories that all claim that their favorite genre is the best one. Now, metal has become one of the most diverse genres of music, with so many different sounds, but only one pogo stick. And that applies to fans of the genre. From your average Louisiana Bob to your white people for peace, metalheads come in all different shapes and sizes, with the one thing uniting them being their 100 Ways to Hate Machine Gun Kelly. Identifying them can be a bit of a challenge to the untrained eye, but fortunately metalheads all walk around proudly displaying this, their pale white skin. You can also identify them because the previous joke pissed them off, and they're currently typing a comment about bad wolves and or skindred. They of course have not yet posted the comment because they're trying to figure out if Serge Tonkian is white.
It's morning. You just made a hot pot of coffee, you know? A train just broke through your fucking kitchen and you spilled the coffee and you're fucking burning.
You can see if we look at your average Avenged Sevenfold fan, it's millennials who unironically call themselves Bones. If we look at Sabaton fans, they're teenagers who claim to be history buffs when in reality that just means they've played every Assassin's Creed game. If we look at Amon Amarth fans, they're dudes who claim to be Nordic despite not being able to find Norway on a map. If we look at Korn fans, they're surprisingly hot despite not showering for months on end. And if we look at Five Finger Death Punch fans, they're 40-something-year-old Marine vets who cry whenever they hear the national anthem. Punks also cry when they hear the national anthem, but for the opposite reason, because minor drug offenders fill our prisons and all our taxes pay for wars against the new non-rich. While everyone knows that punk is just a haircut and doesn't have a meaning, punk historically has always revolved around being anti-establishment. You can see this in their music, their ideology, and most importantly, their fashion. After all, how can you possibly overthrow the soul-harvesting capitalist war machine if you're not wearing a $200 fit? From hitting on underage girls in basement shows to showing up in the hundreds to protest for minority groups that they're not a part of, punks do what they do not because capitalism is a thorn in their side or out of nostalgia for an America gone by. They do it because they're young, arrogant, and hate everything you stand for. While one may assume that punks are the easiest alt group to identify, these guys are actually just drones piloted by highly trained rats. You will never actually see a real punk because real floor shakers move in the dead of night wearing all black and only carry the essentials: bolt cutters to overcome the tyranny of chain link fences, a hammer and several 9-inch nails to drive vertically into the trunks of trees to prevent them from being cut down, and absolutely no phone, no wallet, no identification of any kind, so that there will be no way to identify them after the urge to reach for the pig's gun gets the better of them. Although we should probably stop calling cops pigs because it's 2023 and pigs never shot an unarmed black man who was complying, and pigs don't beat their wives, because unlike cops, pigs are decent people. Speaking of animals, emos. The word emo is short for emotional and is the newest of all these groups, emerging in the late 90s as a product of the previous hardcore scene and gaining immense popularity in the 2000s with artists like 3 Days Grace, Black Veil Brides, Asking Alexandria, Breaking Benjamin, Bullet for My Valentine, My Chemical Romance, Falling in Reverse, and Soulja Boy to name just a few. Emos are the rarest of all these groups because they exist in an unstable state, both figuratively and literally. There's only two paths an emo can take. Either they manage to find the love that's burning to find them, meaning they grow the fuck up and become one of the other groups, or they won't be able to break the habit and find a cure for the itch, and be forced to wait and bleed inside their shell, just one bad hair day away from joining Chester. Moment of silence. Although emos have caught some of the most horrendous bullying in previous years, generational trauma has finally kicked in, and now wherever there is an emo in public view, there will either be a punk or a metalhead nearby watching over them. Not because they like the emo, but because they were once there themselves. The black serotonin in their skulls causes them all to have spiky hair, and the thoughts and prayers of their family is no match for the blood and thunder that their 3 pounds of eyeshadow holds. In the past, it took an entire album and 2 towers worth of generational trauma to make millennials emo. Now, all it takes is your Roblox GF telling you that she doesn't love you like she did yesterday.
Fuck them kids, bro.
Finally, the last and probably most well-known and misunderstood group, mimes. The word goth previously referred to great heathen armies of German barbarians before Giorgio Vasari used it as an insult against buildings he didn't like, essentially calling the style of architecture barbaric. In my opinion though, the only thing barbaric about these buildings is the archers standing on top of them. The word goth would come up again as yet another subculture derived from post-hardcore and post-punk in the 80s. Modern day goths have nothing to do with any of that though, and are just cosplaying cartoons from the 2000s. Not surprisingly, goths are by far the most sexualized out of all of these groups mentioned, because every basic white guy suburban sociopath wakes up on the inside when they see black lipstick, and thinks that he can hit the divine chord with a goth girl by listening to Deftones and literally nothing else. He's in for a big surprise though when he finally gets a goth girl and wakes up blinded in chains, with garbage like this playing at full blast.
Who could think of such a horrible thing?
Goths don't mind being sexualized though, because they're doing the exact same thing. Fashion is likely what goths are most known for. Goth fashion is conceptualized as trying to look like a vampire, but it's more like taking the fact that soccer balls were painted black and white so that it would be easy to see on a colorless television, and applying that to a Renaissance fair. In recent years though, it seems anything black qualifies as goth. Contrary to popular belief, goths don't actually wear any makeup, and the black and white that coats their face is just what happens when you're anemic who's ascended past anemic, or you can just call it anemic too. But as we approach October, if you insist on trying to find bulletproof love in the dark of your room despite the apocalyptic havoc of your bad decisions, keep in mind all goth women are bisexual and all goth men's pronouns are he, they, because they know they'll never be him. If you've gotten to the end of this video and caught all 29 lyrical references I made, congratulations, here's your prize. The Suicide Prevention Hotline. Just kidding, of course. If you really caught all the references, you already have the Suicide Hotline memorized, and this is the number to the Clown College.
Killing policemen. Fuck them. Keep fucking them until they're all dead.